Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. You know, today we're going to be looking at a story that's probably as old as time, but it just, it always seems to come back around and it just never gets old,
Yeah.
Martyrdom.
It's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just how a story from thousands of years ago can still be so relevant and people are still debating it and reflecting on it today.
It really is. And the story that we're going to be looking at is John the Baptist. And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of this devotional called Daily Manna.
Okay.
And this one's from January 16th, 2025.
Got it.
And it's specifically focusing on the biblical account of John the Baptist's execution. It's found in Matthew chapter 14, verses 1 through 12.
Okay. I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah. And you know what I thought was really interesting is that they even bring in a quote from Bishop Hugh Latimer.
Oh, wow.
Who also faced martyrdom centuries later.
Okay.
So, talk about a topic that stands the test of time.
Yeah, really.
But before we get too far into all of that, why don't we start with John the Baptist himself? So, the devotional Daily Manna really seems to be focusing on John's unwavering courage.
Yeah.
Especially when he was confronting Herod about his marriage to Herodias.
Right.
Do you remember what he said to him? It's in Matthew 14.4.
Yeah. He basically flat out says, "It is not lawful for thee to have her."
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about speaking truth to power.
Yeah. Bold move for sure.
I mean, what do you think gave him the strength to be so bold, knowing that, it was probably not going to turn out well for him?
That's a good question. I've often wondered, was it purely faith, or was it, a deep sense of righteousness, or was it a combination of both of those things?
Yeah.
I think the Daily Manna calls him like a burning and shining light, which is a pretty powerful image.
That is.
But, it really makes you think about, why he did that.
It does. And it's not just about John's character either. Daily Manna kind of delves into the motivations of all the other players in this drama too.
Right.
Herod and Herodias and even her daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. And they even bring up the concept of man's depraved nature,
Right.
It's like, was Herod really that bad? Or was he a product of the pressures of that time, the power dynamics, I mean, they do hint at political expediency and, personal desires possibly influencing his choices. But I wonder if there's more to it than that,
That's a really good point. And that kind of reminds me of when you see, somebody maybe compromising their values
right
to gain power or for personal gain.
For sure. And I mean, we see that today, don't we? I mean, just look at politics or even in our workplaces or, even sometimes within families.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I think is so valuable about looking at these accounts, from history.
Yeah.
It gives us a way to look at, the complexities of human behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And how we make choices when we're in really difficult situations.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's a way to sort of examine those patterns and how they're playing out in our own lives.
Yeah.
So if we just take a step back for a second, it seems like this story isn't really just about martyrdom. It's more about what forces people to take that kind of stand.
You got it.
Both internal and external.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that brings us to another really powerful example of standing up for what you believe in.
Okay.
Bishop Hugh Latimer.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember?
He was burned at the stake.
Yeah, in the 1500s.
For his Protestant beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that the devotional had a quote from him.
It did, yeah.
It was something about lighting a candle that couldn't be put out.
Yeah, that's the one.
Mm.
As he was facing his execution, he told his friend, his fellow martyr, "Be of good cheer, brother Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust shall never be put out."
Wow. I mean, that is an incredible image.
Yep.
A candle that can never be extinguished.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And it just, it makes you realize what a huge impact these acts of martyrdom have.
Yeah.
Even centuries later. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. I mean, why do you think that is? What is it about their sacrifice that's just so powerful?
Well, they were willing to face unimaginable pain and even death.
Yeah.
For what they believed in.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it resonates deeply with people.
Yeah. It makes you really examine your own beliefs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what would I be willing to stand up for?
And it's like their unwavering commitment to the truth becomes like a challenge for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, how do we live more genuinely?
Right.
And with more courage.
More authentically and more courageously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But the devotional, the Daily Manna, doesn't stop there.
It doesn't.
It says that the pattern set by John the Baptist and the apostles of Christ, should challenge Christians to preach Christ in and out of season. So what do you think about that? Especially, for those of us who are living here in the 21st century.
It's a good point. It's like, it's easy to get caught up in, the historical context, but it makes you think about, how this applies to us today.
Yeah.
We might not be facing literal persecution like John or Latimer, but we're still called to be, burning and shining lights.
Okay. So let's unpack that a little.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Okay.
Practically speaking,
Yeah.
It can't just be about preaching.
Right. And, the devotional actually talks about this.
Okay.
It says, obeying God rather than men.
Okay.
So it's about speaking truth to power even when it's uncomfortable.
Okay.
Or it could cost you something,
Yeah.
Think about, whistleblowers or,
Right.
individuals that stand up and, talk about injustices, even if they're going to get, in trouble professionally or socially.
Well, those are powerful examples, but they're also really daunting,
They are, yeah.
It's like, how do we know when to speak up?
Right.
And when to stay silent?
Exactly. Not every little disagreement is a hill to die on.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's all about finding that balance between, conviction and also, being discerning.
Right.
We have to consider what might happen as a result of our actions and choose our battles wisely.
So are you saying that sometimes being a quote unquote burning and shining light might just mean, standing up in quieter ways?
Absolutely. It could be as simple as being kind and compassionate in a world that doesn't seem to be very kind or compassionate.
Yeah.
Or it could be about standing up for somebody when they're being bullied or marginalized.
Okay.
It could even mean just living a life, where you're living authentically and with integrity, even when it's hard to do that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not always about the grand gestures.
It isn't.
Or, big public pronouncements.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most powerful acts of courage happen in those everyday moments,
I think you're right. It's about finding those small everyday ways that we can, make a difference and be a source of light and hope for people.
So we've talked about John the Baptist's unwavering courage.
We have.
And all the different, that complex web of motivations that led to his death.
Yeah.
And the inspiring legacy of all the people who choose to stand up for the truth and what that might look like, in our own lives today.
Yeah.
But, the Daily Manna ends with this really thought-provoking statement. And it says, you cannot be a burning and shining light without attracting the fury of the powers of darkness.
It does say that. Wow. That is a powerful statement.
It is. What do you think about that?
Well, it makes you think that anytime you try to, stand up for something good, anytime you try to shine some light in a dark place, you're going to encounter resistance, There's always going to be those forces that want to put out the light just to keep things the way they are,
Right.
But it also makes you think, the brighter your light shines, the more you're making a difference, the more you're disrupting the darkness.
I like that. Yeah. It's really insightful. And it's like a call to action, to sort of lean into the resistance.
Yeah.
And maybe even see it as a sign that you're making a difference.
I like that a lot.
But that also begs the question.
Right.
How do we deal with the inevitable pushback?
Right.
How do we stay strong?
Right.
When people are trying to silence us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question. That's when it's good to remember people like John the Baptist and Hugh Latimer and all of the others who've come before. And just remember that, standing up for truth often comes at a price, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they faced, they went to prison, they were persecuted. Some of them even died, Yeah. But their beliefs never changed.
Right. And it's like, their strength gives us strength.
Yeah.
Because we know that other people have gone through such hardship for what they believed in.
Yeah.
And so that helps us face our own challenges with more courage.
It does, yeah. It's a reminder that you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
And the Daily Manna actually talks about that.
Also.
It encourages us to remember that even though John the Baptist was silenced, ultimately the truth that he was proclaiming, that couldn't be buried.
So it's not just about speaking out, it's about the lasting power of the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like planting a seed,
Right.
Even if you bury it or step on it, if the conditions are right, it's still going to grow.
You got it.
Yeah. And that makes me think about, what's been standing out to you from all of this?
What really stands out to me is this idea that being a quote unquote burning and shining light
Yeah.
isn't always about, big things.
Right.
Like you were saying, it's about those smaller acts of courage
Yeah.
and integrity and compassion that we do every day.
Yeah, I like that. It means that we can all be like little beacons of light in our own ways,
Yeah.
and we can kind of light the way for ourselves and for other people.
And maybe when we do that, that's when we're going to attract the fury of the powers of darkness,
Right.
what the devotional says. But even when we experience pushback like that,
Yeah,
we can think about the example of those who came before us
that's right.
and be strong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to think about it. What kind of light are you going to shine in the world? How are you going to light the way for yourself and the people around you? That's something good to think about. And just remember, you're not alone.